What is the most important consideration when choosing a Bible translation? This is the question we're going to answer in this video. Before we do that, we want to take a moment to welcome our new viewers, as well as to welcome back our subscribers. We wouldn't be able to continue without all of you, so we really appreciate your support. Stay tuned at the end. I'm going to give you guys a spiritual gift. You may have heard that there are more translations of the Bible in English than any other language on the planet. There are, in fact, more than 450 English translations of the Bible. The advantage of this is that the cream rises to the top. Iron sharpens iron, so to speak. This leads to some excellent translations of the Bible. However, the downside is that most people become confused as to which version of the Bible they should use. If we were to simplify this down to one rule, what should it be? That is the point of this teaching, to show you the one thing that you can use to guide your decision. I think we'd all agree that the Bible is a pretty important book. For those who believe in its message, it is the roadmap to eternal life. It is the pathway to the presence of God in heaven. It is a lamp to our feet and a light into our path. It's how we learn about God and His ways. It leads to everything else we do in this life. Since that is the case, choosing the best way to receive the revelation of God's will through His written word is important. That leads us to this next point. How do we come by our understanding of God? How does He communicate with mankind? Where did the text of the Bible come from? How do we receive godly revelation? Well, there are 5 main ways the information came to us before it was written down. It came through visions, dreams, prophecies, incarnations where God spoke directly to mankind, and events in history. These things were recorded in God's written word. That written word was communicated in its original languages. Finally, we receive the information through translations into target languages such as English. This is where we run into differing opinions and methodologies of how to translate the Bible. If we imagine a road of translation methods leading to the original languages, we can see where we are at and where we want to be in relation to the original text of the Bible. The first op is the paraphrase. A paraphrase is a rephrasing of the original into the vernacular of the day. We have seen an increase of people using these types of versions more and more for their study and daily reading. Even though this is the case, these are the furthest away from the original text. They have a great deal of interpretation in them. Some interpretations are good, some are bad, and unfortunately, some cases they actually distort the true meaning of the text. One should not rely on a paraphrase for accurate information. Everything read in a paraphrase should be considered as commentary and compared with a translation to keep the Bible from being misunderstood. In this camp, we have the Message and we have the Living Bible. If we move further on down the road here, we have dynamic equivalence. It's known as thought for thought. The idea is to convey the meaning of the original, even if it means using different words. You can see that the New Living Translation uses this, and as well as the New International Version. When you use original meaning using different words, this is done in a lot of translations to some degree. The difference is that the more literal translators do this only when they feel it is absolutely necessary. I've noticed that sometimes the meaning assigned by a thought-for-thought translation for certain words can lead to less accuracy and more interpretation. And when I mean interpretation, that means that it's someone's opinion rather than what necessarily is there. The optimal equivalence, the next stop down the road, I provided to show kind of a balanced position between the dynamic equivalence and the formal equivalence. The optical equivalence method is a method used by the Christian Standard Version to try and harness the best of a thought-for-thought approach, that's dynamic, and a word-for-word approach, that's formal. In this, they are seeking to have the best of both worlds and to come up with a text that is most balanced between readability and adherence to the original meaning. If we move on from here, move to formal equivalence, this is where we will find the English Standard Version of the Bible, the King James Version, the New King James Version, and the New American Standard Version. This is a word-for-word approach to translation which it attempts to translate each word to its original Hebrew or Greek equivalent. It also tries to use the same English word for the original counterpart consistently. It's a preferred method of translation for those who wish to study the Bible. It gives the most amount of clarity to the original with a good amount of readability as well. It's my favorite for study. A literal translation seeks to adhere even more closely to the original, but does not care as much for readability. Young's literal translation, Webster's literal translation, or Webster's translation, those are two of them. Sometimes these can have some awkward sentences and word constructions, though they can shed much light on the original languages. Now, if you want to get closest to the original languages, there are interlinear translations. Now, these are used as an intermediate step between the English and the Greek and the Hebrew. They are the last step before fully going to the original text exclusively. There's two types. Your standard interlinear, which is listed here as straight, and a reverse interlinear, which uses the English word order instead of the original word order. At this point, you should have a pretty good idea where you might fall within these categories. We are close to talking about the most important factor. If I may, I would like to give you my recommendations before we talk about the most important consideration to keep in mind. If your goal is to achieve the best understanding of God, I recommend you use a word-for-word translation. That's formal equivalence. This gives you enough readability to use for daily reading with a high enough accuracy to use for in-depth studying. So you can use it for daily reading and studying. My number one recommendation for this is the New American Standard Bible. Highly accurate, and it has the best format to show where translators supplied words, where the Old Testament is quoted, among some other things. If you really want to know more, watch my video on why I like the NASB at the end of this video. It's actually going to be in the end card for a detailed explanation. Number two, I like the English Standard Version. It's my second recommendation. It's close tie with the NASB. The reason it's in second is because I just like the features of the NASB more. As a translation, I have no qualms in recommending it. It's perfectly fine. The New King James Version of the Bible. It's an update of the King James Version. It's also an excellent translation. It tends to hold more closely with the word order construction of the King James Version. So if you're used to that, it just basically takes out the these and thous and uses some more modern text and updates everything. Number four, I have a soft spot in my heart for the King James Version. I mean, it just sounds like the Bible to me. Not to mention, it's the first Bible I ever used. It's the version I memorized my first scriptures in. Although it is kind of archaic, it's very poetic, and there's a lot of free resources related to it, since it's one of the oldest translations. It's just everywhere. If none of these will do for you, then I do have some other recommendations. If none of the above will work for you, I would encourage you to take a look at the Christian Standard Bible. They are working hard on the translation to make it balance between readability and accuracy. That's what they've named it, optimal equivalence. I don't know if anybody else uses that, but they do. And finally, for the easiest readability that I feel comfortable saying this is going to get you on the road, at least a starting point, you can use a thought-for-thought translation, and the translation that I recommend here is the NIV, the New International Version. The reason is it's one of the first modern translations to come out. It's proven itself over the years. Although I do prefer the 1986 version, as I think the 2011 version has taken a little bit too much liberty with the original text. If you're looking for a paraphrase, I have no recommendation for you. To me, they're just commentaries. They have too much interpretation to be useful for any kind of serious reading or study. So now we come to the burning question. What is the most important consideration when choosing a Bible translation? The most important consideration is this. Is this the best Bible translation to use to increase my understanding of God? I would encourage everyone to use this as the key factor for choosing a translation. What's going to work best for you? What will you read? What level can you understand? But don't just stop there. Continue to evaluate the translation you are using to make sure it is going to do this job for you. It's not about what the best version is. It is about how it performs, how it functions. When it comes right down to it, all translations are essentially commentaries on the original text. The original must be understood through careful study. Translations are tools to be used, though some are far better than others. So what translation do you think will accomplish this for you? I'd like to share just one more thing for you before I end. The English translation is just the first step. In order to grow in your understanding of God, you will need to add more steps, such as Bible study methods, ways you can get more meaning and understanding from the text, language tools so that you can look up meanings of Hebrew and Greek words, original text, learn to read the original so that you can move toward fluency. This is where the greatest rewards of the Bible study reside. There are so many rewards in knowing the context, in knowing the original language, and it clears up a lot of misunderstandings. Well, that's all I have for now. I want you to thank you for watching Pilgrim's Light Ministries. It's been my pleasure to share this with you today. Because of Pilgrim's Light, we exist to train you in how to learn, know, and teach the Bible. Our training is always free. We always like to provide more content. If you want more content like this, please watch, like, and comment on our other videos, subscribe, and hit those bell notifications, and that's really going to help us out. And I promised you a spiritual gift, so I'm going to do it. It's in the way of a blessing. May the Lord's blessing rest upon you, and may His protection surround you. May the Lord's smile shine upon you, and may He be gracious to you. May you be honored in the Lord's presence, and may He grant you complete fulfillment. Take care, and we'll see you next time.